more. Let's turn to Shel Winkley. He's a weather and climate engagement specialist at Climate Central. Shel, welcome to our program. So now that Melissa has made landfall as a powerful Category 5 storm, what is your biggest concern in terms of what awaits the citizens of Jamaica?
Yeah, it really comes down to the wind impacts. And in terms of that, a couple days ago, the center of the storm looked like it might cut right across the central portions of the island. It moved a little bit further to the east, so it only crossed the western portion of the island. That being said, though, that really put the entire island in the wake of what we call the dirty side of the storm, the part of the storm that can create more rainfall, more severe weather, and that terrain that is over Jamaica, that mountainous terrain. When you're talking about the likelihood of 20, 30 inches or more of rainfall, that's going to be a lot of freshwater flooding. A lot of residents of Jamaica talked about how they've been through hurricanes before. You mentioned it. This is going to be one of the, if not the strongest they've ever experienced. But the new threat here, and something that really hasn't been experienced, is how much rain is falling and how quickly those totals are going to come up. I'm talking about multiple feet instead of just inches.
Wow. And Shel, how unusual is it for a Category 5 storm to actually make landfall with such intensity?
Yeah, a lot of the storms that we've seen that are up here in the record books alongside now Melissa, they intensified, but then they weakened before landfall. So this is really worst case scenario. You had the storm that is as fast as it was, as strong as it was, as textbook looking as it was, making landfall. And we know that the island of Jamaica, while they are resilient, they've built well in some places, that this is going to really test no matter where you are on that island.
And why are we seeing more and more storms with this level of fury, if you will?
Yeah, so one thing to be very clear about is that Melissa was always going to be a formidable big storm here in October. But looking at the water temperatures that Melissa encountered, this is where it gets its strength. So over the weekend, when the upper level winds relaxed, we knew that there would be intensifying and quickly. Melissa monopolized on excessively warm waters, about 1.4 degrees Celsius above average for this time of the year in the Caribbean, and using attribution science, understanding the role of climate change, we know that those water temperatures were made at least 600, 700 times more likely to be that warm, that then boosted Melissa. But where it was a Category 5 for the past day, and where we've seen just this last rush to the finish line of intensity, those water temperatures were made anywhere from 800 to 900 times more likely. On this scale we're talking about, it only goes up to 1,000. So what that tells us is, again, Melissa was always going to be a hurricane, but we know that it was over waters that are almost impossible to be that warm at this part of the year, in this part of the Caribbean, without an influence of climate change.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. So what would you tell people, Shel, who couldn't leave Jamaica and are now hunkering down?
Yeah, really the messaging from the National Hurricane Center, which is just stay where you are, try to stay hunkered down and in as much of a secure area as you can. Days before, ever since this weekend, the National Hurricane Center has been talking about the life-threatening flooding, the life-threatening storm surge, the catastrophic winds. But I think the biggest part of this, and we've seen this with a couple of other disasters this year, is that communications will likely be down for much of the island. So in order to go into that search and rescue efforts afterwards is going to be tricky, not only because of the destruction and the damage, but because people are going to have a hard time reaching out and getting to those emergency systems.
Yeah. All right. Well, we certainly appreciate your take on this. Shel Winkley, thank you very much.